Hello everyone, I hope everyone will be fine. Today we are going to discuss the end of history, international relation topic. A student have asked for the clash of civilization, but we couldn't be understand the clash of civilization first if we haven't understand the end of history first. So, because the clash of civilization was written in response of the end of history. So we have to discuss the end of history first. But it is kind request from all of you, if you haven't subscribed my channel yet, so please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon. Thank you very much. So the end of history, it was a post Cold War. When the Cold War ended, an American philosopher, Francis Fukuyama, presented a theory. Uh, he wrote an essay, The End of History. He then expanded his essay into a book named The End of History and the Last Man. It was published in 1992. What is the end of history? He gave his philosophy about the end of history. His key points were Western liberal democracy has won over against all his competing ideologies, and the free market concept has won over all the competing ideologies. According to Fukuyama, end of history means that the clash of the ideologies which was coming from Second World War between communism and capitalism, it is has ended, and it is ended by the victory of Western liberal democracy. Western liberal democracy dominated all other ideologies, and free market economy of the Western liberal democracy is has also dominated all other competing ideologies. Liberal democracy and free market economy, it was these were consisted of capitalism system, and competing ideologies were consisted of socialism and communism. It was the clashes and conflicts between the Russia and the USA. USA has the capitalism system, and Russia has the communism system. So the clash and the conflicts of the Western liberal democracy, and it was the other competing ideologies. It was communism. According to him, Western liberal democracy and free market economy are the final stage of history. What was his meant by the end of history? His meant by the end of history was that the Western liberal democracy is the final stage of the human government. Human evolved from different stages to Western liberal democracy. Now, Western liberal democracy is the final and best form of the government. Human cannot be evolved further from Western liberal democracy. So, Western liberal democracy is the final form of the government, and Western liberal democracy has dominated all other ideologies. End of history doesn't literally mean that history is ended. History will continue, events will happen, but and the end of history means that there will be no ideological wars or conflicts, because human is socio-politically evolved to a best form of the government. Human evolved from different stages to Western liberal democracy. So now, as the socio-economic evolution of the human has stopped, it is stopped on the Western liberal democracy. Western liberal democracy is the last and better form of the government. With the Western liberal democracy, history is ended. Human is evolved from different form of government to democracy, which is the final and best form of the government. Now, let's discuss some key points of the end of history book. According to Francis Fukuyama, that history should be viewed as an evolution process. It means that human evolved from different stages to Western liberal democracy. It is as the human evolved from feudalism, monarchy, authoritarian, and finally to democracy. So, according to Francis Fukuyama, that history should be viewed as an evolution process. That history was is evolution, and it is an evolution which is ended with the Western liberal democracy. His second point, his view is that history is purposive. It means that history has a purpose. It is going through a purpose, and it is going with a purpose toward, and it is going towards its direction. It has a direction to which history is going. It is progressing. History is a progress as well, and it is progressing. And it is progressing where it has an ultimately it has a goal. It is a goal which history is progressing to that goal, and ultimately it is a goal oriented. History is a goal oriented, and history is moving. History is traveling. History is going toward that direction, which is an ultimately a goal. Uh, third, third points of the end of history, that the goal of the history. Now, what is the goal of the history? So, the goal of the history is that it is oriented to be to rationality, and it is oriented to rationality. The direction and the goal of the history is it is going toward rationality. As people were not rational in the previous system of governments, they were slaves, and they were ruled by the feudalists, the aristocratic, the monarch, etc. Now, as the people are getting awareness, so they are going to rationality. Now they are aware, and they know everything, and it is also going towards freedom. The goal of the history is freedom. People were not free in the previous form of government, in monarchy, in authoritarian, and feudalism, in aristocracy. Now, as they become rational, they become free also. So, they are free now in the democracy, and a democracy is a system of government where people are free. With the uh, with the end of Cold War, clash of ideologies is now resolved. Francis Fukuyama said, with the end of Cold War, the clash of ideologies is now ended. How it's resolved? The clash of ideologies is resolved. How it resolved? So uh, he said that the end of history means liberal democracy is the final form of government for all nations. The clash of our ideologies has been ended. There can be no progression from liberal democracy to any other alternative system. There is no alternative system of liberal democracy. There is no alternative system of liberal democracy. As there is no alternative system of liberal democracy, so with the end of Cold War, the clash of the ideologies has ended. Fukuyama uh, said that with French Revolution has been proved that democracy is fundamentally a better system. French Revolution has proved that democracy is fundamentally a better system because in French, before the French Revolution, it was a type of monarchical system where they were not free and it was not a fundamentally better system than democracy. People get awareness, they become rational, and they want to get freedom. For that, they uh, stand for a revolution, and they stood for revolution, and French Revolution is happened. With the French Revolution, and democracy proved that democracy is the fundamentally a better system in all aspects, ethically, politically, and economically. Now, here most basic error in discussing Fukuyama work is to confuse with history is to confuse history with events. Remember, remember that Fukuyama end of history means that events will be occur in the future, but these events will not be based on ideologies. Human socio-cultural evolution has been stopped with Western liberal democracy. Democracy will become more and more prevalent in the long terms, although it may suffer temporary setbacks which may of course last for centuries, but it is certain that liberal democracy is the final stage of political evolution and it cannot be improved. So we should not be confused between events, history and events. uh, Francis Fukuyama means end of history means that the ideological conflicts and clashes will be now ended. He doesn't mean that history is ended, history is stopped. History wouldn't be stopped. History will continue and events will be happen. Fukuyama supported international consumer culture. What is international consumer of culture? It is a pre-market economy, means government should not be interfere in pre-markets where people are free to produce and consume products. People are free in their business. Whatever they want, they can produce, and whatever they want, they can consume. So he supported international consumer culture, means free market economy. Criticism. Now we'll discuss some criticism on Francis Fukuyama, the end of history. So the first criticism uh, in on Islamic views, he didn't explain Islamic societies and their reservation about liberalism. How? Islam doesn't support or follow liberalism. There is a democracy in Islamic countries, but that is far different than the Western liberal democracy. Islam is not only a religion but also a complete code of life, having its own socio-economic system, which is contrary to Western liberal democracy. So he didn't explain these reservation of Islamic society, that how would liberal democracy deal with these reservations. The second criticism that how we will liberal democracy would be deal when the global economic crisis happened, as it was happened in 2007 and it was happened in Greece. So how would we liberal democracy will deal these crisis when global economic crisis happened? He didn't explain these things as well. Free market third criticism is that market restricts or constrain democratic process. How it's con- uh, uh, constrain or restrict democratic process. So it is a common observation we have seen in capitalism in liberal Western democracy that in pre-market economy, rich people become rich and poor people become more poor. So we have seen, and it is a common observation that with the we have seen it is a common observation that in free market economy, in capitalist system, in capitalism, in Western liberal democracy, poor people become poorest and rich people become mm, richest. So it is restrained and it is restrict the democratic process of equality. So he didn't explain in this scenario that how would a liberal democracy will with how would liberal democracy deal in such circumstances. He also ignored suffering of many people, as we have seen in Western liberal democracy in democratic system that poverty is in high ratio, food insecurity, people didn't get food. Also there is a huge abuse of human rights. So he also didn't explain these things that how will Western liberal democracy deal with such things when human suffer from the things. As Fukuyama said that Western liberal democracy is the last form of human government. So here a question is raised that China is not a Western liberal democracy. China is a communist state, and China is rising as a number one economy of the world and competing with the Western liberal democracy. So how can liberal democracy is last form of a government and last form of the government and economic system? He didn't explain that as well. He also ignored resurgent Russia and East Asian models. These resurgent Russia is a democratic system, but is not purely democratic system. It is a communist form of government, and also East Asian models like Singapore and Hong Kong. They are now developed economy, and they are rising. They have mm, strong economical system. So they are also not, their structures of government is also not a fair liberal democracy. So he didn't explain these views, these things is also that resurgent Russia and East Asian, how would they deal with the liberal democracy? So it is with this the topic, the end of history is ended. I hope you all would have understand it. If you have any question regarding this topic of any other topic, leave in comment box and I will try to reach your queries. I hope you all would have subscribed my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, so it is a kind request to subscribe my channel, and I will discuss in the next video lecture is clash of civilization. but it was important for us to understand first, to have understood first the end of history. So this is why I first presented, I first make a video lecture on the end of history. My next lecture will be on the clash of civilization. I hope you all would have understand this lecture. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless everyone.